Welcome to another episode of the Better Dental Life podcast. I'm Mark Davis, excited to be with you today. We're going to dive into one of the most important concepts that will change the way you experience success, fulfillment, and happiness, not just in your practice, but your entire life. Now, I want to ask you something, and I want you to really think about this. When I ask you, who are you, what comes to mind? Now, if your first instinct is to say, I'm a dentist, or I'm a hygienist, I'm an office manager, then stick with me, because that's a title. It's not your identity. Now, yes, you may be a dentist. You built your career around it. You've poured in the time, the money, the energy, but that's not the sum total of who you are. And this is where so many people get trapped. We wrap our entire sense of self-worth, our success, and our identity in what we do instead of who we are. And that can be dangerous. Now, the reality is our lives are much more complicated than that, right? Our lives are much more than our practice. But our practice life is intimately integrated with our personal lives. So I want you to imagine two circles. One circle would represent your personal life and how healthy your personal life is. And another circle would represent your professional life. Now, those of us that are dentists, that would represent our practice and the health of our practice. Now, these two circles, imagine them bumping into each other, just touching. So they make this figure 8. And they are linked, but they're kind of separate entities. Now, imagine our lives are just moving in this figure 8 pattern around these two circles, around our personal life and then around our practice life. And we can think of our lives as traveling around both of these circles. Who we are is traveling around both of these circles. Now, the reality is they're not completely separate circles. They are kind of linked. They're integrated in many ways, but they are two distinct entities or two distinct parts of our identity, and we can think of them separately. Now, they are linked in a really critical and important way. Sometimes you may be struggling or have challenges in your personal life for whatever reason, maybe financially, maybe physically. And when our personal life is challenged, when our personal life we're struggling, we're just not feeling great, then the other circle, our practice, is also going to suffer. So when our personal life shrinks, and you imagine that circle shrinking as maybe it's not as healthy, then our practice circle is going to shrink. And on the other side, if our practice is really struggling, and we're having challenges, we just don't have the team members that we want, or we're not fully staffed, and we're putting all this energy into our practice, but it's just not getting us where we want to be, that's going to affect our personal life. So when our practice circle shrinks or becomes less healthy, our personal bubble shrinks and becomes less healthy. Now, the good news is converse is true. Like the opposite is also true. When we want to improve our personal life, we start to focus on our personal life and grow our personal life, our practice is going to automatically just grow too, because we're going to step into our practices feeling a little bit healthier, feeling a little bit happier. In many ways, we are our practice. The energy we bring in is going to bring more success in our practice. And if our practice is thriving, then our personal life is going to kind of grow in many ways too. We're going to come home with more energy for our loved ones. We're going to have better finances coming from our practice. It's going to help our personal life. So they're really linked in many ways. And this is why at Better Dental Life, we say transform your life and transform your practice. They both need to happen together. And the purpose that I have, my purpose, is to help dentists have more fun, to fall in love with their life. Better Dental Life is really about having a better life as dentists, a fulfilling life. And a fulfilling life is one where you wake up excited and you go to bed fulfilled. And this requires strength in both of these circles, our personal life and in our practice. And the best part is you control both of these. Now, there are many things that are out of our control, but with all the unknowns, with all the challenges, with all the setbacks, you can control the success of both of these circles, of your personal life and your practice life. And when both of these are really thriving, you live a fulfilling life. Together, both of these circles, this figure 8, is a full life. Now, successful people, they are great at self-evaluation. They can really be honest with themselves without beating themselves up, without this critical self-judgment. Now, judgment, meaning like, yeah, I'm going to be critical and look at things critically, but I'm not going to, have self-doubt and insecurity when things aren't working well. I'm just going to look at that and be like, oh, here's an opportunity for improvement. So I want you to think about both of these circles, these parts of your life, and do some self-evaluation. Be honest with yourself without beating yourself up. Say, okay, maybe there's an area that's weaker that I want to improve on. And the great thing about this is we don't need to improve everything all at once. We don't have to have everything fixed in our practice and everything fixed in our personal life. But we can pick one area to improve. And as we improve that area, it's going to build everything up. Both circles grow. The figure eight gets bigger. And so if we're going to improve on an area, maybe it's helpful to divide some areas in both our personal life and our practice that we can then categorize and work on and improve. Now, the 3 pillars of an amazing personal life that would fit in our personal circle are going to really be health and our relationships and our finances. These are kind of the 3 pillars of that personal life. So I want you to think about, where are you at in your personal life with your health, your relationship, your finances? Now, your health, this is your power source, right? So let's be honest. If you don't have your health, you're going to struggle with everything. And our health isn't just our physical health. That's kind of what we think about. And that's a part of it, our physical health. I mean, we can't run a thriving practice if we're exhausted, if we're in pain, if we're running on caffeine and adrenaline. Taking care of your body is an important part of coming with energy to our practice. And our energy is our most valuable asset. So we've got to protect that. But our health is also our emotional health. And every emotion you feel is a signal. Now, we feel negative emotions about half the time, and we feel positive emotions about half the time. And negative emotions aren't bad emotions. They just don't feel as good, right? And positive emotions are feeling good emotions, right? They feel good internally. But when we feel these negative emotions, and most people, when they feel negative emotions about some aspect, and maybe it's a negative emotion about something in our practice or a negative emotion about something in our personal lives, it's just a signal that our brain and our body is sending to us that something's not quite right. And healthy people that are healthy emotionally, people with great emotional strength, are going to recognize those negative emotions and go, what's the message that's sending to me? And then I don't need to feel that anymore because I'm now going to work on that. So if I feel disappointed, if I feel frustrated about something, I'm going to think, what am I frustrated about? What am I disappointed in? And then I'm going to change that. Now, sometimes we let these just run wild, right? They consume us because our brains are constantly looking for what's wrong. And that's just part of the way our brains work. That's an important part of our survival in a world where things can go wrong. And our brains need to be focused on that, but sometimes we're hyper-focused on what's wrong and we forget to look at what's right. And so then we hyper-focus on what's wrong and we just feed on these negative emotions. But also, what a lot of people do is, because these negative emotions don't feel amazing, we want to push them away and suppress them. And so we're feeding on these negative emotions by focusing on what's wrong, but then we hate to feel them, so then we're going to numb them. We're going to try to buffer those emotions. And we buffer these emotions by just distracting our minds. Like, I just don't want to think about that right now. And I'm going to distract my mind with social media. We get our cell phones out and we get on social media and we just kind of stream. We're on TikTok or on Instagram and we're watching videos, or we just want to numb our minds or buffer these emotions with Netflix and TV or even podcasts or the constant noise, right? Always having something going in our mind so we don't have to stop and think about how we really feel. We don't have to stop and feel. And these numbing emotions can then be even addictive behaviors, right? So a lot of ways people numb or buffer these emotions would be, like I mentioned, Netflix, social media, alcohol, can be shopping, it can be, gambling. And so some of these can actually lead to addictions. But really what we're trying to do is just buffer those instead of recognize them and process them. So an important part of our health is an emotional health, where we just really are comfortable with negative emotions And we just love those positive emotions, and we recognize them all as a part of a great life. And then the third part of our health, we have a physical health we need to focus on. We have our emotional health that's really important, is our spiritual health. So the third part is spiritual health. And so whether it's faith in a church, whether it's faith in a higher power or mindfulness, but simply having a clear vision for your life that helps keep you anchored. So when the storms of life come and hit, you just don't get blown away. We need something that's going to anchor us. And that's what our spiritual health does. So the first pillar in our personal life is our health. And the first thing that we want to do in a self-evaluation is to look at our health. How is our physical health? Do I need to work on that? How's my emotional health? How's my spiritual health? Is there any part of our health that we need to work on? The second pillar of our personal life, and an amazing personal life, is our relationships, our environment. Our environment is everything. Now, your personal relationships, these are your family, your spouse, your kids, your significant other. And this is what you're working for. This is why we actually go into our practice, is for these people. And if we aren't actually present with them, then why are we working so hard in our practice? If we are so stuck in dentist mode and we don't have any energy when we come back for the people in our lives that we are doing this for, then we're going to really have this hole, right? We're going to really have this missing. This pillar is going to be really, really weak. So we want to strengthen our relationships. And we want to look at, what is the health of my relationship and the health of the relationships in my life? And is that something, that I need to work on? Is that something that I need to build up, that pillar in my personal life? And then the third pillar is your finances. This is your freedom. Now, we think of our finances as our practice, and yeah, that's maybe the source of our finances and where we get our income. But once we receive that income, once that comes into our personal life, what do we do with it? Are we spending that so quickly? Are we stretching ourselves a little bit too thin? Are we saving for the future? How are we managing our money? Are we managing it wisely? Because this can add an incredible amount of stress to our life. In fact, most people who are really, really stressed out in their practices are kind of stressed out because they don't have a financial buffer, and they need that money coming in from their practice to help boost their lifestyle. I remember when I was in dental school, and a group of us, we were working as valets while going through dental school. So we, dental school during the week, and then on the weekends we would park cars to make a little bit of extra money. And the group of us, we each had families. We were married. We had one or two kids, and so we were supporting this family as best we can, trying not to take too many student loans. And so we were working a little bit, and we were joking as we got close to graduation. And we were talking with an instructor there and joking about how, this is going to be so amazing. Like right now, we're barely working for minimum wage parking cars, a little bit better with tips, but not making much money. And then in a month, we're going to have our license and we're going to make incredible money as dentists. And we didn't really know what incredible money meant, but we just felt like, yeah, we're going to now start to make some serious money. And the instructor there kind of smiled and laughed. And he's like, oh, you feel like you're broke now? You'll be broke when you make more money. You'll just be broke at a higher standard of living. So I want you to think about, where are your finances? Are you still broke at just a higher standard of living? Are you spending everything you've got? So be honest with your finances, right? That's the third pillar of an amazing personal life, is what we're doing with our money. We need to be living within our means, living within our budget, spending less than we make, and saving for an amazing future. This freedom feels incredible. And those are the three parts that fit into that personal life bubble. And so if we're struggling in any of these areas, whether it's our finances, whether it's our relationships or our health, our physical, our emotional, and our spiritual health, then that bubble is going to shrink, and that's going to affect our practice. But if we want to pick just one of these areas to work on, it's going to actually help our practice bubble, because we're going to then go into our practice with more energy, more enthusiasm, more confidence. We're going to feel better, and our practice is going to do better. Now, if we want to think about what are the pillars of our practice health, what fits into that practice bubble that makes an amazing practice, and we can divide these into three incredible things as well, and almost kind of the same way. They almost are about health and about relationships and about finances. That's a little bit of how these are, but we divide them in the business world in a little bit different ways. And so maybe the health of our practice is the structure. So in business, we think about structure or systems. These are the processes that we want to have in our practice, and our processes, our systems need to be healthy. And then we need to have a team, our relationships. Our team needs to be aligned with a common vision. And then the third pillar in our practice. So the first is systems. The second is a team that has a common vision. And the third would be our finances in a way, but they're more than that. This is our dashboard. This is our scorecard, some way of measuring our success and our progress. So it's not just our collections, it's not just our production, but it includes all the other things that we're measuring to get better. So if we were to break this down, how are we doing with these three pillars in a healthy practice? How are your systems in your practice, the processes in your practice? Now, these don't all need to be written down. Some systems you do want to write down. You want to have really structured, and we want to have kind of an organization of the systems in your practice. But some systems are just how you do things, and it doesn't need to be written down, every detail. I use CEREC in my office. I love CEREC, and I love CEREC dentistry. And sometimes with CEREC, I will have 2 or 3 crowns that we're going to do all at the same time. And so I have a system in my office of, I will design the crowns, and then my assistants mill those crowns out and process the crowns, put them in the oven, put a stand and glaze if they need to, and then bring them back, let me know, and then I put them in. And so that's kind of the system. It's not a written system. We don't write that down. It's not formalized. But a couple of times I had an assistant who she wasn't paying attention, and she milled the same crown out twice. So when I had 2 teeth that looked similar, she wasn't paying attention. She didn't really understand the software very well. And so she'd say, "Hey, I'm done." She comes to me. I come to get my 2 crowns, and they're the same tooth. And that happened once. I explained it to her, taught her about how we would do that a little bit differently. And then it happened again. And I'm like, okay, clearly I need something that's a little bit more of a formalized system. So I formalized a system. That's an example of how what my system I had in doing things wasn't working for my team. I love this assistant. Like, I could have gotten rid of her and just hired somebody else. But I love this assistant. She has incredible strengths in many other areas. And so I just created a new system, a new process in the office that said, we are always going to start milling the lowest tooth number first and then go to the highest tooth number. It doesn't matter when we have more than one tooth. If we're milling tooth number 12 and tooth number 5, 5 is going to be milled out first and then 12. If it's, 30 and 31 or 29, 30 and 31, we're going to start with 29 and then go to 31. That's the order we're always going to mill. And so what is the next one that needs to be milled. You're not going to get confused about what did I just mill and accidentally mill the same crown out first. And since then, that's never happened. So it happened a couple of times. It's never happened since. So it's an example of where I formalized a system. And this is a system that was formalized in my office, but I didn't write it down. Like, we didn't put that in our big master systems book that outlines systems in the practice. It's just, this is how we do things now. And so some systems are going to be kind of informal, and some systems are going to be formalized, and some systems are going to actually be written down. Here's how we take a new patient phone call, and this is the information we collect. That's formalized system in our practice. So pillar number 1, how are the systems in your practice? And is there a breakdown in the systems? And there's a breakdown in the systems because you'll start to increase some frustration with your team, and then you're going to look at your scorecard and you're going to start to see some numbers are not working really well. Or you're going to have the frustration may be, the lab cases aren't ready when your patient comes in. It's a breakdown in your system. So it's time to look at the system of how you track lab cases and who's tracking lab cases, and are they ready when your patient comes, or are you in communication with the lab? That's a system. And when the systems aren't working, you're going to feel that in your practice. You're going to feel the frustration. Your team's going to feel the frustration, and your numbers are going to reflect that. The second pillar is your team. That is having a dream team of rockstar employees that have a common vision, that are all working for the same thing. And that doesn't always mean that every team member is perfect, but it means that we all have a common vision. And your relationship, your professional relationship with your team and how your team is performing, this is a direct reflection on you. So if you're experiencing dysfunction, if you have high turnover, if you have lack in some loyalty of your team members, it's time to look in the mirror. Where are you at as a leader? And again, we may need to make some changes in our team, and that's okay. But we also can look at our team a little bit differently. We can think of ourselves a little bit more as teachers and coachers, as an amazing leaders of teams, and build those teams up. I think too often when there's a frustration, we think we need to just change. We need to switch up. They screwed up a few times. I need to get rid of them. Instead of maybe I need to teach a little bit better, and maybe I need to coach a little bit better. I truly believe one just core belief that I have, it was taught to me from Brene Brown, is that people are doing the best they can with what they've been given. This is the assumption of positive intent. I'm going to assume that people are really trying to work positively. They're trying to do the best they can with what they've been given. And maybe they've got some what they've been given, meaning kind of their history, their background, their education. And maybe some of that comes with so much baggage that it's just not working in our practice. Like what they've been given is not working for us. And we don't have the time to train and the energy to train and coach them. It's going to be too expensive. And so those, we'll let go. But we're going to always err on the side of what can I do to coach and to train my team members to build this amazing team. Now that third pillar, the third pillar of a healthy practice, is your dashboard, your scorecard. This is the way you are measuring your success. And when you're thinking about your team, a scorecard is important because what you measure is what gets done. If we want to see a change in anything, then we need to measure it. If we have a team meeting, we all get together and we talk about something, and then nothing happens, and 2 weeks later we're like, why are we not seeing that change that we talked about? It's because we're not measuring it. And this may seem like a little bit of, micromanaging, but it's really, really not. It's just measuring. We're not managing people. We're trusting individuals in their leadership, but we are going to measure the success of how they're doing. And if we have a system change, then we need to measure that. So if I have a change in my systems, the way I want my hygienist to talk to me when I come into the room, that could be a system. How do I want them to introduce the patient to me and go through a breakdown of what's going on with the patient so I'm ready to do my exam? And I have that system in my practice. But if it's not happening, if I'm coming in regularly and that's not happening, then I need to start measuring that. And then every morning I'll say, okay, I was really properly introduced to, 80% of my patients. These 20% I didn't. We missed something. Tomorrow, how are we going to do better? Or today, how are we going to do better, right? That's measuring something. But our dashboards are going to measure big numbers. Our dashboard, our scorecard is going to measure how are we doing with our recare efficiency? How are we doing with case acceptance? How are we doing with our perio efficiency? So all of these are part of that scorecard. And then each of those little numbers ultimately add up to what are we doing with our production and collections. Those production and collection then becomes a part of our profit and loss statement. How are we doing with our budget and our finances on our profit and loss, and combining our profit and loss with our cash flow? So we kind of need to look at both of those, right? That's why when we talk to a bank and they want our financials, they want our profit and loss and our balance sheet. They want to see our cash flow. And so that's really, those three pillars are the health of our practice. And if we want to change our practice, we need to look and dive into one of those three things. If something's not working, it's because of one of those three things. If we're feeling like we're not bringing in enough patients, that's a structure. That's a system. What is our marketing system? What is our answering our phone system and bringing in new patients? Are we losing too many patients who are retiring or moving and we're not bringing enough on? Or are they not coming back in for cleanings? Are we trying to bring them in the front door because we're just losing them out the back door? That's a systems problem. Or once we're in there, how's our team doing? How's our team interacting with each other? And so if our practice is struggling, it's because of a system, or it's because of our team, or it's because we're not monitoring. We're just not looking at our dashboard. We're not paying attention to the numbers. And our numbers are going to tell us if there's a problem with our systems or if there's a problem with our team. So that's the health of our practice. So we can get really clear, really critical and say, what do I need to work on? Now, here's where people get stuck. When things aren't going well, most people look for excuses instead of solutions. And they just kind of blame the environment, right? I can't find good employees, or in my town, my area, all my patients are insurance driven. Marketing just doesn't work here, or this is just too competitive an environment. Like whatever it is, we come up with these excuses, we blame, and we just say, I don't have the resources in my area. I don't have the resources for my personal life. I don't have the resources for my practice to make a difference. But it's never a lack of resources. It's always a lack of resourcefulness. The most successful dentists, the dentists that I work with that are really thriving, they refuse to stay stuck. And they hire somebody to help them. They hire coaches. They learn from those who have figured this out. They get in rooms with people who are thinking bigger and playing bigger and living bigger. And that's what I want for you. So if you are feeling stuck, if you're feeling one of these areas that you want to improve, and just need to pick one, and everything's going to improve. And then once you've kind of worked on that for a little while, pick another one and it's going to improve. And we start to just kind of slowly pick at little pieces. We don't have to fix everything at once, but focus on one thing and then get the resources that you need. Be resourceful, because the resources are out there. You just need to find them. You need to be resourceful. And those resources may be reaching out to somebody who can coach you, reaching out to a consultant, a practice consultant like Better Dental Life, or a coach like Better Dental Life, or somebody else. Doesn't have to be us. I love coaches in my life, and I've had coaches that are life coaches, help me in my personal life. I've had coaches that for my physical health, when I'm training for a marathon or an Ironman, I have a coach that's going to help me do that. I have practice consultants that I have look at my practice. We all need those. Even as a practice consultant, even as a coach, I have coaches and consultants, because we need somebody from the outside looking in sometimes to help us see a little bit differently and help us look at what we can do to shift and to improve our bubbles, to constantly be growing this figure 8 and live a fulfilling life. And when we do that, we start to love the journey. Now we have goals, we have a destination, like I want this to be better. But a fulfilling life is loving the growth and loving the challenge, right? And we're going to have these challenges. These things are going to come up and be chinks in one area of our practice life or our personal life. And when these come up, it may shrink our bubble a little bit. But instead of getting stuck, we're going to step up. We're going to take control. We're going to create a better dental life. And not someday, but right now. So what I'd love you to do is just pick. This is your challenge. Pick one thing. Whether you're ignoring your health, your physical health, emotional health, spiritual health, whether it's your personal finances or whether it's your practice, the systems in your practice, or building your team, pick one area and work on it. Small actions, little things that are done consistently are going to create massive results. You don't have to solve everything at once. You just take a little bit of action right now and you do it consistently, and that's how you transform your life. That's how you transform your practice. All right. I hope this resonates with you. Thank you for joining me. Now it's time to just stay resourceful, stay powerful, and never settle for less than your full potential.